up, everybody? Garrett back here, and I want to talk to you today about a movie that I just saw last week at Panic Fest, and this movie is called Freaky Tales. It's an anthology movie that I think is completely bonkers. It's right up my alley, and I think, in my opinion, this is going to be an instant classic. So if you guys want to stick around, I'm going to be interviewing the writers and directors of this movie. We're going to talk all about Freaky Tales, why I can relate to it, and why I think you guys are going to love it. All right, gang, we are back. Like I said, I just got back from Panic Fest in Kansas City, and what a great event. And seeing a bunch of movies that weekend, there was one that just stood out as my absolute favorite. It was something that I could really relate to when this thing first hit, and we'll talk about this. Man, I was all in from step one, and I am here today with Ryan Fleck and Anna Boden, the directors of Freaky Tales. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
We're here to talk about Freaky Tales, and like I said, I did see this at Panic Fest. Before we came on, I mentioned, was that the first screening of this? And you said no, it was not. But this just kind of hit theaters last week. Tell me the process of the screening of this for the first time in front of an audience. Like, what did people think? Because at Panic Fest, people gave it a standing ovation.
It was really interesting because when you're making the movie, you're editing it, and then you have a cut that you think is good, but then you've got to screen it for feedback. So like that's part of the editing process. You screen it first to a small group of friends and family, and then you think you're really close, and then you screen it to a larger group of strangers, right? that you hope like the movie. But you keep learning what's working, what's not, where the confusions are, and so you keep revising the movie. And then you think you're done. You think you've got it pretty good. And so then we went to Sundance with it. And Sundance is like a specific kind of crowd, but they're all different, right? So Sundance has big movie fans, but they're different kinds of movie fans. They're not necessarily all genre movie fans. So it was an exciting screening process, but it wasn't necessarily the greatest, right? It was awesome, but it was just different. And then we screened it for Oakland, right? We had at the Oakland Grand Lake Theater, which is where part of the movie takes place. And like Oakland went wild for the movie, but in a very different way from Panic Fest, which those people don't know anything about Oakland. That's a different audience from a Sundance audience. And they're there because they love the genre of this kind of movie. And so it was just so satisfying to hear those kind of the different kinds of audience reactions that we get from this movie. Panic Fest was amazing.
Yeah. Anna, do you kind of agree with him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all three of those screenings were pretty incredible in their own way. I mean, Sundance was 1,100 people in one theater, so it was loud. I mean, it was insane. And, we had 100 people there just from our movie. And so it was just such so much love and, such an amazing place to kind of show that movie for the first time. So it was pretty wild to be there and to screen it for the first time in front of 1,100 people in the Eccles Theater, and to get that kind of reaction. It was insane. But it was, I would agree, interesting to see how the different parts of the movies elicited different responses from all the different audiences, and how in Oakland you kind of started to heard everything, every little emotion that everybody had. You could literally hear what they were going through in every moment, and how people might have been more attached to one kind of when everybody, when you walk into Lord's Ice Cream, there was a huge applause, whereas there was I think a lot of love for kind of the first chapter even at Panic Fest, and just the whole kind of ethos of the punks at Panic Fest. And that was really fun. And I loved kind of hearing the different vibes of the different audiences wherever you show it. But one thing's for sure, which is this movie is meant to be seen in a crowded theater, because just, having people around you who are applauding and cheering, when Nazis get lit on fire, that's fun. It's not meant to be like watched on your telephone alone.
Right. It definitely does have that party movie feel for sure. And as much as this might be something that people have seen before, I feel like it's something that people haven't seen before. I'm a huge fan of anthologies, number one. So that already had me excited to check this out. I didn't know anything about this movie leading into Panic Fest at all. So I went into it completely blind. And as soon as it started getting going, I was like, all right, this was my vibe. Oh my God, it's taking place in 87 in Oakland. Like I was a little kid in 87. So, I mean, I wasn't experiencing these things that we're seeing here, but as it comes down and you see these people leaving the theater and you see running the marquee, The Lost Boys, I was like, oh my God, that's literally like my favorite movie of all time. So right then and there, I was already like hook, line, and sinker, like into this movie as they're coming out reciting lines from the movie and singing I Still Believe and all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what is this? Like, I love it. And, you know, the aesthetic of 87 is super, you know, big for me and that kind of era and time. And being in California, I live on the East Coast, but there's certain things about my life when I think about different years and time. And a lot of it has to do with like music, movies. I was a big baseball card collector. So when you think of 87, I'm thinking in my head, like, okay, you had Mark McGwire just getting on the Oakland A's and, you know, Canseco's there and Ricky Henderson. So I'm thinking of all that stuff. And what's cool about this movie is it's an anthology that kind of wraps around, but it's utilizing like real historic people and events and situations that happened, or people might have been like, oh my God, that feels like a situation I was in at one point. And like you said, the first story about the punks and the Nazi skinheads and stuff, I was really big into the punk and hardcore scene in the late 90s, mid to late 90s here on the East Coast. And it was not that much different than what we saw in your movie in 87. I mean, granted, it wasn't the same vibe, but I remember being a hardcore kid in a punk scene, and all of a sudden the skinhead crew would come in and they get in the pit and just start beating everybody up. Like, it felt very real to me. And I was like, this is exactly what it was like in like the mid to late 90s. So between the Lost Boys and the aesthetic of the 80s and seeing that first, story, I was kind of like, oh my God, like this makes so much sense to me. So with these stories and with these different historic events, like, how did you create this? Did you live this? Like, either of you, like, did either of you grow up in Oakland, for one?
Yeah, I did. So I was like 10 in 87. So I wasn't going to, even though it's all ages, I wasn't going to Gilman and fighting Nazis at that age. But I was a big Warriors fan. I was an A's fan, and I heard that Sleepy Floyd game, which is a real game in Chapter 4. The real person, Sleepy Floyd, went off in this playoff game against the Lakers, and the radio play-by-play announcer calls Sleepy Floyd Superman, but he's like screaming it out of breath, like, because the game is just so, like, he's just taken over this game. And I just remember hearing that on the radio, and it conjured all kinds of like NBA player as superhero fantasies that lived with me over time, lived with me for years, until it became he was able to bring it to life in Freaky Tales. Same thing with the Too Short music at the time, for Chapter 2. And then Chapter 3 with the Pedro Pascal storyline really just brings in all of those movies that we loved from the 80s, from that era, those pulpy sort of crime, graphic novel, canon films kind of movie storylines.
Yeah. And how about you, Anna? Could you relate to a lot of these little stories here? Like, did you live anything similar to this?
More, not really. It was more like, for sure, in terms of just the passion for the movies and, trying to bring in all our kind of favorite movies that we watched and drawing from those, like our passion and that kind of creating this like cinematic mixtape from the 80s. But really it kind of came from Ryan's childhood and this idea of Freaky Tales, that literally he's been pitching me a version of this movie called Freaky Tales since we started working together 15, 20 years ago. He's been like, what if we made a movie called Freaky Tales that's about this thing or about this thing? And then it kind of what in we kind of discovered this connection between all these stories that was about these underdogs, and these underdogs kind of coming together and seeking justice and really like kicking the bully's ass. They got us excited to create this anthology, and that got me excited to kind of create this version of Freaky Tales.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I get it. It's just really, I think it can work for, I think, everybody. Because I mean, what would you even consider this? Like an action comedy? I mean, there was elements of a little bit of, you know, the horror fans are gonna love it, as you saw at things like Panic Fest, and it's just a bonkers movie that I think, again, bringing the elements of real life stuff. And Ryan, like obviously when you said you were talking about, you know, hearing that on the radio as a little kid about Sleepy Floyd and it being embedded in your brain, I mean, obviously it stuck with you a long time if you'd created this story and you'd be like, I want to utilize this vision of this guy that I had in my head as a kid and build this into this story here. And the same thing with music. You weren't necessarily maybe in that scene per se, but obviously to build this story, you had to have known a little bit about what was going on in Oakland at the time, right?
Yeah. So the Gilman punk scene is a pretty legendary space in Berkeley, adjacent to Oakland, and I knew about it growing up. It wasn't my scene. I was more of a hip hop kid and classic rock teenager, but I was intimidated by that scene and realized later that I probably shouldn't have been, because they were welcoming and they were nonviolent, unless Nazis can mess with them, which is true. I mean, that's the closest thing we have to a true story beginning to end in the movie, which is they were being harassed by these neo-Nazi skinheads, and they decided to stick up for themselves and defend themselves against it one day. So, but yeah, we also had we had Corbett Redford as an advisor on it. He made this fantastic documentary called Turn It Around, the story of East Bay punk, which is like an amazing amazing resource. He introduced us to all these OG Gilman regulars, the people that were there in '87. And so that community is really what helped the authenticity of that storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing that Operation Ivy playing and stuff, I was just like, oh my God, that's so sick, you know? Like, so I just loved that first scene for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my husband, like you, was like East Coast, you know, punk hardcore kid who lived through a very similar kind of experience on the East Coast in the late 90s, and also, you know, has like a little scar on his face from, you know, the guys with the steel-toed boots coming in and like fucking shit up when they're just trying to like have fun in the mosh pit. So totally relate to you know, that kind of East Coast, you know, it's like happens everywhere, like happened across the country. It wasn't just in Berkeley, but I think a lot of people can relate to that for sure.
Oh yeah, it was this had to have been, I was really big into the scene between like 95 and maybe like 2000, 2001 in Providence, Boston area. So yeah, I mean, it was definitely going on there. And some of these little, you know, we had clubs and stuff there, but you would also go to concerts or shows and seeing these bands in churches. And I remember going to one in like they would go anywhere, preschools, like while they were closed, they would have like shows and stuff in there, and people would be like messing stuff up in like classrooms. And I'm like, how was there any regulation to be having a show in here? You know, it was wild. Like things were so weird back then. But again, it was so relatable to that story. Is he from that general area or more New York?
Yeah, he grew up upstate New York, but then he went to college in Boston. So, and that's where he got his scar.
Little beauty mark there.
Yeah.
Yeah. so he was having a little PTSD watching Freaky Tales too.
Yeah, a little bit. No, but he loved it. It was like so fun because he got to see those guys get their comeuppance.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely is a total underdog story. Like even when you kind of mesh them all together, like between all the different parts, and you know, having everything kind of hooked together, really, really just it worked. Like things were they were so different, but at the same time, it worked so well. Like I said, with the idea of that first scene coming out of the Lost Boys, and that wasn't the end of it. It wasn't just talking about those kids, and all of a sudden, as the next story starts, you're like, oh my God, it's the other group of people from before. And I just loved how that kind of all meshed together. Now, using the Lost Boys, obviously in '87, was there a specific reason for that? Are you guys big fans of that? Did you see the Lost Boys in '87? Was it something that stuck with you?
Yeah, I think, you know, at that age, I probably didn't see it in the theater till later, when it was revised at some other place. But yeah, no, I saw it on VHS like most people. And I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies. Also, I don't have the shirt, but I admire your shirt. And so yeah, when we knew we were setting it in '87 because of the Sleepy Floyd game, because of Too Short's Freaky Tales, because Gilman had just been established. '87. What are the movies that the kids are going to be coming out of? And Lost Boys was right at the top of the list for us.
Now, did you make a list of '87 movies and have to figure out, okay, what makes the most sense here? What would work?
Yeah. There was a lot of Googling. There was a lot of, oh yeah, we could do that. And, but it just, Lost Boys was the one that felt right. It's also filmed in Santa Cruz, which is in Northern California, not far from Oakland. So it just felt right. It felt like the right vibe.
Well, it hooked me, man, right away. So I was all in at that point. But this was a little different seeing this at the fest, because obviously with the fest, you have a lot of these movies that are, you know, showcasing for the first time or looking for distribution. But this was a little bit different because you guys have already, Lionsgate has already kind of picked this up. Because there was people walking around making sure nobody was filming anything or had their phones out, like where other showings at Panic Fest that didn't really have that same kind of, like, you know, you can't say anything type vibe. So how has that been? When did this get picked up? What's going on with it now? I know it's already hit theaters. What's been the kind of reaction here? And is this something that we're going to see continue into like physical media formats? Like, I mean, have you guys gone that far yet with this?
Yeah, so it's in theaters now. If you know you have anybody to tell to go see it, they should go see it, because it won't be in theaters for too much longer, because it'll be start being on VOD. I think April 25th. Is that right?
Wow.
April 26th. And then it will, and then after that, they are going to make a Blu-ray of it, and it will be in a like VHS looking container, which is kind of fun. And
it's going to be a vinyl soundtrack. It won't have all the songs, but I think it'll be a very cool collector's edition.
Yeah, I hear it might be green. I haven't seen it yet, but that's
awesome. So is Lionsgate distributing the Blu-ray as well?
Yes.
It's good. I mean, it's good to see, because I mean, I'm big into physical media, so Lionsgate, you know, was at the top of their game with physical media, and it's going to be cool to kind of see that they're going to take something new that I think is, to be honest, I put this on the thumbnail. I think this is going to be an instant classic. I don't see anybody watching this and not having a ball with it. Like 100%. Like everything about it to me just kind of worked. And I don't even want to talk about it here, but there was definitely a cameo in here that everybody basically's jaw dropped when they saw this person come on screen, and especially what their role is in the movie just totally worked. I don't want to get too much into it on like how that happened. I heard the story at Panic Fest of kind of how that all went down, but I think that alone is something that people should check out, just to kind of see. Like I said, I knew nothing going into it. I think maybe it's been kind of out there a little bit, because I think I might have seen it on a poster of some kind.
You can talk about it. You can talk about it.
You want to talk about it? All right.
Tell people to pause this if they don't want to know the cameo.
If you don't want to know the cameo, pause this now, or just fast forward it about 5 minutes or so. But yeah, so they walk into a video store. Obviously, it brings us back to the days of video rental stores, and who's behind the counter but none other than Tom Hanks. Now, Tom Hanks, it's mind-blowing to me, because he's not just somebody that just jumps into a movie to do a cameo. When you see Tom Hanks's name on a movie, it's like, you know, a blockbuster hit. Like, he's not just doing anything out there. And that's what I think was so wild about him, is that you just don't ever see that from somebody like him. And I know you guys have a little bit of a history with him on kind of how this all came about, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, so we had the script written, and then we went off and made a show called Masters of the Air, which he produced with Gary Getzman, his producing partner. And we got the script to him through that process. And he thought it was funny, because in the script we have characters referencing that actor from Oakland, and the guy from The Money Pit, and the guy from Bachelor Party and Splash. You know, so he loved the running gag on it, and he appreciated the love letter that the movie was to his hometown as well. And he said, "Sure, I'll be in the movie." But that scene as the video clerk was not fully written yet. Like that was intended. We fleshed that out for Tom Hanks specifically because we were like, oh man, if we're gonna get Tom Hanks here for a half a day, let's give him some words to say. So it was kind of created for him.
Great dialogue too for him. Like that whole scene is really cool.
And we just wanted like as many Oakland cameos in the movie as possible, and people really showed up for it. You know, they loved the script and they loved the love letter it was to Oakland, and there aren't that many opportunities to kind of show up for Oakland the way that people really are excited to. And I feel like, you know, Tom was really excited to show up for Oakland the same way that, you know, Raphael Sadiq, who was in Tony, Tony, Tony and did the composing, you know, was up for it. And, you know, there are a bunch of other cameos as well. But Tom is the crown jewel cameo. I'll admit it.
Everybody was in awe at that point when he turned around, because like I said, it's not something that you would have, if you would have told me to give you 50 people that could have been, he wouldn't have been on the list, you know? So that's what was really cool about it, is that, that he agreed to do something like that. And I think it really tells a lot, you know, for the script, and that he would even agree to that, you know, because he's putting his name and face on a movie. And like I said, we wouldn't be doing this here today if I wasn't going to be out there telling everybody who watches my stuff to be like, you need to see this, because if you like what I like, you're gonna love Freaky Tales. And like you said, VOD, it's coming April 25th, and right now it's still in select theaters currently.
Yeah. And the theatrical experience, I mean, we all know is special. It's special in this movie as well.
100%. And like I said, Panic Fest was great. I saw a lot of cool movies in there. This was my absolute favorite. I just think it worked on every level for me. It hits so many different audiences. It's bonkers. It's crazy. It's fun as hell. And I just want to thank you guys for coming on here really quick and talking about this. Now, before we head out, if there's any other things you want to say, or you want to plug this or whatever, or where to follow to get more information, like, do it now. Floor is yours.
No, I mean, look, we're here because it's fun. It's, you know, we've done a bunch of interviews for the movie, and you can tell when you're talking to somebody who gets the movie. And we could tell you were excited about the movie, so we're happy to talk to you about it and share that enthusiasm for these kinds of movies, which aren't really. I mean, the Tom Hanks cameo. Speaking of that, he's quoting in his #1 underdog movie of all time. He's quoting a Roger Ebert review of a movie, where he says, movies like this hardly ever get made, but when they're made this well, they become precious cinematic miracles. Now, you don't have to apply that to our movie, but there is something, when you love movies, you feel that way about certain movies, and I feel like the audience for this movie just gets it.
Yeah. And I mean, the cast, we just had such an amazing dream cast to work with, from, you know, not just Tom Hanks, obviously, but like Pedro Pascal, Ben Mendelsohn, Jay Ellis, who just showed up like a total warrior for this, and Dominique Thorne and Normani. It was just such an amazing cast, and I think that people are going to get such a treat if they come out and check it out. So I hope they do.
Yeah, no, I hope you guys do too. And like I said, once this thing hits VOD, once this thing hits physical media, it's going to even bring it even further up. I guarantee this is going to be some kind of cult classic. No question about it. I want to thank you guys again for taking the time to come on. I know you're probably super busy right now promoting Freaky Tales, but guys, thank you again so much. This is Garrett from Born to Be Rad. And like always, stay rad.